Hey everyone, it's your girl Pebbles. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about part 2 of my visit to the Cape Coast Slave Castle in Ghana, Africa. But before we get into it, listen, like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so when I upload new videos, you won't be left behind. Thank you in advance. So look, I want to expand on my trip to Cape Coast and the Slave Castle, but in a Pebbles kind of way. I want to explain in my own words how the slave trade was a business. And I don't think a lot of people look at it like that because we're so stuck on the trauma of it all that sometimes we don't critically think about a lot of the reasons of why it was done, even though it was wrong, right? And so when you think about business, think about any local business in your town. Supermarket, mall, shoe store, anything, right? Anything. The slave castles were specifically built to be a business, to house cargo, and that cargo were human bodies. They were kidnapped or enslaved Africans, right? And I know it's difficult to wrap your mind around that, but that's what it was. So the Atlantic slave trade, and or you can call it that triangular trade, it had 3 legs to it. And we're going to break down the 3 legs, and then I'm going to give you my final thought. It's another thought outside of the 3 legs of it. But it's all like mixed together. So here we go. The first leg was Europeans came over to Ghana, Africa, or the west coast of Africa, to extend an olive branch to befriend the Africans because they had an agenda in mind. Of course, they're not going to tell you what that agenda is at first, but they had an agenda in mind. They would give the Africans manufactured goods like liquor and weapons. And I'm going to refer to my notes because I don't want to leave out anything. Liquor, weapons, food, different merchandise, right? Merchandise. And so when they all became kumbaya and goody-goody, they started to trade these manufactured goods with the Africans for enslaved Africans. And so the manufactured goods, which were actually like tangible material things, again will be traded for humans, for bodies. But those humans, those bodies, those Africans were considered cargo. So that's the first leg. The second leg would be the Middle Passage, meaning they would then take their cargo, because remember, it's a business, right? They would take their cargo, which were humans, the Africans, put them onto a ship, and they would go through that voyage of the Middle Passage that could take up to 3 months, right? And so once they got, or before they got to America, they would have a little pit stop, and they would take the Africans, their cargo, to the seasoning process, which is training. And so the Africans, they knew all about freedom. So of course they would have to be trained how to be a slave. No different from any job that you had in the past, you may have now. You had to get trained for that job, right? And so that's what the seasoning process was about. They would take these enslaved Africans and train them, and they would be there for weeks or months at a time. Remember, they were malnourished, they were being treated horribly, they were raped, they were really sick. And so the enslaved Africans that were already there in the Caribbean would nurse them back to health. And then once they did that, they were trained for the job because it's a business, right? And so after training, after the employers felt like, okay, they know their job, the third leg would be to take them to the New World, which was America, and they would be dispersed and sold off at the auctions to wherever they was going. They would get their final position, and the position was that of a slave, because remember, it's a business, right? And so again, the first leg, Europeans came over to West Africa to befriend the Africans. They would then start trading tangible merchandise for cargo, aka human bodies. They would then put that cargo onto the ships. They would take that cargo to the Caribbean, train them for their position, because you got to be trained. You have to be trained. You got to know what you're doing. And then take them to America for their position, which was that of a slave. And then the third leg was once the enslaved Africans received their position of a slave, they would then mine the crops, which could have been rice, which I hear was really hard to do, sugar, sugar cane, tobacco, and indigo, which produces the color blue. They would then harvest those crops and send them back to Europe. So that was the triangle that you got from Africa. Well, actually coming from Europe to Africa to to Caribbeans to America back to Europe. That was a triangle, right? Was that a triangle? Y'all get the point. So it was 3 legs to it, and it was all very specific in how it was done. They had policies and procedures, just like your job, because again, it's a business, right? And so if you're ever wondering why or how European countries, the king and queens, how they're so rich, where they get all their money from, a lot of insurance companies, a lot of banks, a lot of these people insured the cargo, merchandise, which were the slaves. And if you ever hear, a lot of these companies are rich off the backs of enslaved Africans, black folk, that's because it's factual. It's an actual fact. That's where they get all their money from. That's where they begin to get their money from, right? And so they had a head start. So if you're ever wondering how is it that black people, they just still lagging behind, they can't get it together, like why we're in the position that we're in, this is why. Because it was a business. So when you think of slavery and everything that encompassed slavery, think about how it was a business. Also know that the Africans weren't the original people they wanted to enslave. They originally wanted to enslave the Native Americans, but they found that when they tried to, a lot of the Native Americans passed away from diseases that the Europeans brought over to them because their immune system wasn't built up like the Africans, because they usually stayed to themselves. But then also the Europeans found that it was hard to enslave them because they tried to do it in their land. So the Native Americans knew how to get away. They knew where everything, was at here in America. And so the next best people to enslave were the Africans. But also the Africans had knowledge of agriculture on a large span. They knew indigo really well. They knew a lot of things, and so it was the next best thing to do. So again, I'm going to keep being redundant. When you think about slavery, think about how it was a straight up business, like any business you may patronize today, present time. Okay? One more thing I want to add in. When I was at the slave castle in Cape Coast, I'm not surprised, but it was interesting to see a church there. They made sure they built a church. So you had a plaque engraved on the wall, and I believe it was for the governor at the time, just thanking him for allowing them to come and set up business, because we're not going to forget it was a business. Just appreciating his help, and saying how he was a God-fearing man. And they had hundreds of slaves in dungeons right downstairs, in chains, neck chains, and foot bondage and chains, and linked to each other, raping them. And remember, the men and boys were raped too, and just treating them like trash while they were upstairs having church. How could that be? How could you walk around saying that you love the Lord, and you love God, and you're a God-fearing person, and you treat people how you want to be treated, but you had people downstairs in dungeons waiting to be sold off like cargo, because in their mind that's what they were, but you praising the Lord? And that's because their mindset was of people who thought that people that were melanated, they weren't human, they were beasts. And so they can do it with no problem, because they really believe that. And so again, because this video not going to be long. The slave trade and or triangular trade had 3 legs to it. Befriending, trading merchandise for other merchandise who happen to be human. Middle passage to America, which is the second leg. Once the slaves got their position, they mined the crops, harvested crops, and everything was sent back to Europe so they can sell those things and make money. All while the next set of cargo waiting to come over could hear their captors upstairs having church. So I said I want to do this in the Pebbles community. And I just wanted to share that. Think on that. How can anyone do that? But claim we love the Lord. Namaste. Did you enjoy this video? Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for new videos coming soon.